There are military and law enforcement people who are quite fed up with this, illegal run operation that's treasonous. I mean, I'll just be flat out put it out there. They are committing treason against the United States. When I tell you that this group are a bunch of sociopaths and psychopaths capable of this, people need to believe it. And not letting those guys get away with their agenda, because this is a 70-year long-term plan that they're coming to a head now, which can be, and you can be executed for that, as you know, by federal law. I think there are certain people who are not going to sit on their hands if the Congress just dithers for another 2, 3, 4 years. Because from a law enforcement point of view, we've been able to prove that these operations are already criminal enterprises. And by the way, anyone who's listening who is an attorney, we're starting our own legal fund to sue all these corporations for these technologies under the civilian RICO provision, racketeering, influence, corrupt organization. It's been used against the mafia. I always point out to people, this organization is the world's largest and deadliest mafia. So you can invoke that RICO Act that was passed in 1970 as a civilian organization, which is what we're about to do. And there's a U.S. attorney on our team, federal prosecutor, that when we go to discovery and get evidence, we'll turn over to him. He can do a criminal prosecution at that point. So we're not going to sit on our hands. Now, we're encouraging Congress to move quickly, but in the meanwhile, I can tell you there are things afoot that are going to go more quickly. So what I'm trying to do is be sure, and this is why, listen, everyone sitting here listening should write to your member of Congress and your 2 senators, whatever state you're from, and encourage them to pass these laws protecting the witnesses and to hold open hearings. Because I don't think we need to continue this process like at this last small hearing with the 3 guys, where Grush said, oh, I can't talk about that, I have to be in a SCIF, which is a secure compartmented information facility, top secret facility. No, because these projects should not be afforded any national security protection since they are being run illegally. I think we should take a much more aggressive stand towards fully open hearings on this, which we've been calling for 30 years, but I think your listeners have more power than they realize if they were to write their member of Congress, their representative in the House, and their 2 senators, because they need to hear from the people. They need to hear that the people care about this issue. The most dangerous is their capabilities to stage a alien invasion that would convince everyone it's false, and B, things that they can do geophysically. Now, what I mean by that is I have a non-official cover, a guy who's deep cover, currently in the system that described this illegal covert group were able to move an asteroid on a trajectory coming from the sun to skim over the Atlantic Ocean and Pacific to cause massive tidal waves and destruction deliberately. And an ET craft intercepted that and saved our bacon. Now, I also know that they have systems that they can put on fault lines off the coasts of various land masses like California and elsewhere, and they can trigger those, and those can cause massive earthquakes and tsunamis. When I tell you that this group are a bunch of sociopaths and psychopaths capable of this, people need to believe it, and not letting those guys get away with their agenda, because this is a 70-year long-term plan that they're coming to a head now, is a true threat to humans. So those 2 areas are the most disturbing things I have discovered about this organization, what their plans are and what their capabilities are. And these aren't theoretical capabilities, these are actual ones. So to have an organization that's not being overseen by the people or by Congress or the White House, that have those sort of technologies and that kind of malicious intent, we're talking an existential threat to humanity and to our country. And that's why, I left my medical career a few years ago to fix this, because once I learned what was really happening, I was ready to walk away from, whatever it is, 400,000 or 500,000, 600,000 a year as a doctor to fix this problem. And I don't get paid, by the way. Everything we do with this is pro bono, or we're sort of philanthropic group. We're supported by donations. And, these films, by the way, how we did it? We crowdfunded them. The biggest crowdfunded documentaries in history have all been the ones we've done on this. And you can see all of them, like all 3 of them now. The Lost Century.
How much have you crowdfunded?
Huh?
How much have you crowdfunded?
Well, this last one, I think we raised a little over $700,000 to do the Lost Century and get it out. But see, I mean, we don't have a marketing budget, so the only way we can actually get the word out is folks like you sending out to your fans, the base, and influencers. And I know that people like Chris Brown and Demi Lovato and Sally Arna of Godsmacked and others have helped, get the word out through their fan base. So a lot of it is having influencers help us get the word out. And I thank you for that. So the illegal secret government used these in clandestine operations, drug running, human trafficking, staging false events like abductions so people think the aliens are a threat, and in some cases just normal operational use and testing and development. But they're not used in, if you were to contact the senior folks at the Pentagon, one of the comments that Admiral Wilson said, and also the man I briefed who is the head of the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, it's a 3-star General Hughes. He said, look, we can't get any information on this, but the problem is the best thing I have is a B-2 stealth bomber, and this secret government group have things that can do circles around it. So they said, what are we going to do? I said, well, you have to get these under control. Now, this is what I've been saying to everyone from the CIA director for Bill Clinton in '93 all the way through the '90s, and I'm still saying it to members of Congress. The good news is that the amnesty bill, if it passes, which after a 6-month period, all those operations would be considered criminal. Then you could put law enforcement in place that goes in and seizes these craft and technologies and the bodies. Well, because they're wise enough to know that if they were to do such a thing, it would create panic and would also be portrayed by the spinmeisters as an alien invasion. See, it's a catch-22. If they were to do what you're suggesting, the public has already been brainwashed about there being a threat from aliens, which is completely not true. But you bring up a very good point. And this is one of the things I had this conversation with these members of Congress about in the last few months, is that any civilizations that is thousands to hundreds of thousands of years more advanced than we are, if they were hostile, they would just shut this whole enterprise down it'd take a fraction of a second. So this is a proof that they're not hostile. They're also very patient, and they don't want to do something that plays into this false narrative of this illegal secret government group. Because let's say they were to do what you're saying, and they come in and they liberate assets or people, or they shut down our capabilities to target them. That would be portrayed as an alien invasion, which is exactly what they're trying to avoid. And that's exactly what everyone in the public has been, and also, I hate to say, some people in the government have been brainwashed about. Like when Mr. Grush started talking about this event where aliens were shooting up and killing these villagers in Brazil. Well, he didn't know that that was a CIA clandestine operation using our own man-made craft, and it was 100% being done by humans. So why wouldn't he know that? Because he's a young guy who wasn't read into that. He wasn't briefed into that part of it. He just heard the story. So this gets into this whole question of a little bit of knowledge on this is an extremely dangerous thing, but to unpack all of this is very complex, to go through all the evidence, the cases, the science, the top secret. Most people can't get their minds around the 70 or so top secret whistleblowers we have up on our YouTube channel, never mind the other 700. But so it's a very heavy lift, right? But it needs to happen, and at least the process has begun. But the ETs are way too smart. With my meager IQ, if I have figured out what the consequences would be of them doing what you just suggested, and just coming in and taking their assets back, or landing, or exposing themselves massively to the whole planet, they know, like I do, that would be immediately spun by the spinmeisters and the liars as some kind of attack and alien invasion. And I think they're just way too evolved socially and spiritually and intellectually to fall into that trap. Because if I figured this out, I'm sure they have. But I think the other part of it is that I think it, this is a very good question that comes up a lot. Why don't they go ahead and do it and just fix this mess? I go, well, everybody heard of Afghanistan? 20-some years in Afghanistan. So we go in there. I know a lot of special forces and Green Beret people who are over there. And we go in there. We think we're going to impose Jeffersonian democracy on a country run by warlords, right? Opium trading warlords. And 20 some years later, we didn't make any more progress than we had before we went in. We left in a debacle a year ago, and now it's back to warlords. So you cannot externally impose evolution. It has to be organic. So I think the ETs are wise enough to see this and know that humans have to evolve socially, economically, politically, spiritually, whatever, by learning. Now, it doesn't mean they just sit back and let us do everything. And one of my concerns is, and this is something not being talked about enough, is that if you have technologies that are being reverse engineered and studied for 75, 80 years, right, since the 40s, and you reach a certain point where your human technologies get close to what the ETs have, and we become a threat to them, out of self-defense, they may have to intervene. And that is a worst case scenario. And I flat out have said that to members of Congress. We are running out of time to do this little do-si-do dance of kindergarten level of studying this issue. And they would not do it out of hostility, but they would do it out of self-defense. But most people don't know this. I mean, if I know of 122 cases where we've knocked their spacecraft down, we also have weapon systems on satellites out there in space that have targeted these extraterrestrial assets and craft. At a certain point, if our technologies get good enough and they're scalar, which means they could go beyond the speed of light and go to another star system, not the craft, but the energy weapon, then we become a true threat to other worlds. So my view of it is that if people want to know what the problem is in this corner of the universe, go look in the it's what humans are doing. It's like that Michael Jackson song, Man in the Mirror. But it's like we need to look at that and say, what are we doing? But the problem is most of the American public, and I would say most of the Congress still, don't know that those activities, that we have the technologies to be that kind of threat out there, these covert human illegal projects. So letting a group like that wander around doing anything they want in defiance of the law with no oversight by the people and no oversight from the Congress, the people's representatives, that is a true threat. So when people say, are the UAPs a threat? I go, not the ones from off planet, but the ones that are here that we're making, yes. That is the biggest threat to our national security, way bigger than China, Russia, or Iran.